guys, Jay here and welcome to another cosplay tutorial. Today we're going to be working on Dark Magician Girl's staff from Yu-Gi-Oh! And if you'd like to follow along, I do have a template on my website that will be linked in the description below. So let's get started. The first thing I need is a pattern, and since this is really simple, I just draw one out on a piece of paper. There will be a link to my website in the description of this video where you can get the pattern for yourself. I traced the pattern onto some 10mm Yayahan craft foam, and I ended up needing 5 layers. So I trace and cut this 5 times. Then on the pattern, I cut out a rectangle to match the width of the wooden dowel that I'm using as the shaft of the wand, which is just slightly over 1 inch. I then traced that onto what will be the 3 center layers, cut them out, and test fit them on the dowel. I glue all 5 layers together using contact cement, with 2 layers of glue, letting the first layer soak into the foam and dry before adding the second. I can glue multiple layers at the same time, so this goes by pretty fast. Back on the pattern, I cut out a strip that follows the path of the detail spiral, so I can trace it out onto the outer faces. Since cutting out round pieces like this is extremely sloppy looking, and because the whole headpiece is heavily rounded on the corners anyway, I took it out to the belt sander. Now this can easily chew away too much foam if you aren't careful. Just go slow and stop to look at your progress every once in a while to see how you're doing. And the belt sander can't get into the back curve or the small angle in the front, so I go over those with a Dremel, then run some sandpaper over the whole thing to remove all the fuzz. Then with the Dremel, I follow the line for the detail as carefully as I can to engrave it. I tried a high-speed cutting bit, but the ones I had were all too small, so I opted for carefully using a small sanding drum held at an angle. Now for the other end. For the cone shape near the bottom, just use the pattern I provide in the templates and 10mm foam. It's basically a pattern for a cone with the tip cut off. On the side that will become the inside of the cone, I bevel both edges towards each other. If I don't bevel the edge that will be touching the dowel, it literally won't wrap around, because once it's a cone, that edge now sits at an angle. As well as the other end, if I don't bevel that, it won't sit flat. I cut a 15mm foam dowel in half, lengthwise, for the rounded details. I put a link in the description where you can find pieces already cut this way. Trust me, you'll have a much better time not having to fight with the foam dowels. This is annoying to do. Also, these Yayahan foam dowels are really soft, and when used in a prop like this, setting them down on the table will actually crush them, so be very careful. I used more 10mm foam to make a cap for the bottom of the cone, and cut a hole in the center and then glued it together, as well as glued it onto the dowel with contact cement. And I left a little bit of dowel sticking out of the bottom, which I needed in order to glue 2 strips of 10mm foam to make the base where the sphere sits. Then I cap that off with a circle of 10mm foam, and I take the Dremel and make a large concave dome so the sphere can actually sit in a way where it won't just break right off. And speaking of the sphere, for that I'm using a DIY ornament with the hook loop things snapped off and the whole thing glued shut. However, if you get one that's a single piece, it'll look a lot better, and you can make the spout actually fit into the base, but I don't have that kind, so I have to do it this way. And I just super glued it to the base with the snapped off loop part thing up against the base. That way you can't see it. I also forgot to mention I glued the half dowels on with contact cement above the cone on the dowel, on the bottom of the cone, and on the base where it'll be up against the sphere. Now this whole thing is ready for the paint process. I start by masking off the sphere and dowel and use Mod Podge on all of the foam pieces. Since the head isn't glued on, I can just remove it for painting, and I put it on one of those clip stand things that I use for wig styling. And I can use a sword stand to work with the rest of it. For paint, I used gold spray paint for the head and the sphere, then primary blue acrylic paint for the entire shaft. Then once that's dry, I mask off the blue and use fuchsia acrylic paint for the rounded details. Then just super glue the head on, hit it with a clear coat, and you're all done. Alright, so that was the tutorial for Dark Magician Girl's staff from Yu-Gi-Oh! So this is extremely easy, and you can do this in one day if you manage your time correctly. For For me, doing other stuff during the day, this took about 3 days, but each day was only about a few hours in total. So all in all, if you just wanted to do from start to finish, you could do this in less than a day. So let's say you had a Saturday where you had nothing going on for the entire day. You could totally do this, all of it, in just that one day. And that's going to be all for this. If you like it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys later.